I would like to go over this week's assignment, and I suggest that you use the files provided. However, you may use your own content, provided you're able to accomplish the goals of this assignment with it. However, I will ask you not to use a responsive framework such as Bootstrap, Foundation, or any other CSS3 framework. I want you to learn how to write the media queries. I do not want you using pre-existing responsive classes. All right, so this is the website that we have. You see we have a header section up here. Here's our navigation. Notice the navigation is at a fixed width, and we have this photo here, also at a specified width and height. So obviously this is a desktop layout. And what you'll be doing is you'll be starting with the desktop layout and optimizing it for mobile. And this is something that's important because many websites already exist, however, they don't look good on a mobile device. So it's important to understand how to do this. However, if you were developing a website for the first time, you would probably develop it for mobile first, meaning in a very small area, a one-column layout, and then as the screen size got larger, you would start using multiple columns, floats, etc. Now, the direction in which you're going determines whether you use minimum width or maximum width. When you're starting from a desktop layout going to mobile, you work with max width. When you're developing primarily starting at the mobile, you use min width. It really does matter. All right, so let's continue looking. As I scroll down into the content section, here again we see we have a fixed width. We have 3 items at fixed width floated next to each other. Then we go back into a full width footer. However, inside the footer we have 2 items. It's pretty obvious that they're floating. All right, so this is our desktop. As my resolution gets smaller, you can see it's starting to move. Now, this is called a breakpoint. You will see out there on the internet the recommendation to use the breakpoints that exists for the screen sizes of the common devices. There's nothing wrong with that. However, the better suggestion is to change your layout when it needs to be changed, depending on the width of the device. Now, what we just did, we went from a fixed width to essentially one column. So we got rid of our outer container width. We still have a full width navigation, we still have a full width header, but our inner container is now at a full width. All right, so that was the first change. And I cannot overemphasize, do one thing at a time and test it. Another thing that I do, and I do this in my demos, is I'll throw in a change in a background color just to test that I have correctly achieved that media query. Or else you're just wondering whether or not it read it or not. All right, so this looks good. And we're pretty much at under 960 at this point. However, as my device gets smaller, notice everything is scaling. But there comes a point, and notice I do have my aqua background color on there. That's my test that I have successfully entered into my next media query. Now we're at a one column layout. So you can see as I scroll down, there we are. And notice we're still at 100% width. Our images have stacked on top of each other. And in our footer, our 2 floats have now stacked on top of each other. So it's just a matter of getting smaller at this point. Something else that has happened is my background image is no longer there. All right, so this is all you're doing. You're really not doing a lot. Now, we will work with the navigation and the responsive images later. But for this class, all I want you to do is to learn how to work with the outer widths of the container. Here again, you start from the outside and work in. Should you wish to change font size or padding or anything else, you can do that later. Get your main areas responsive first. Work from the outside in. All right, so this is my responsive layout, and here we have the sample files that you will be given. Now notice in my HTML document, I did put a red border just for purposes. It's not a border, it's an outline property for seeing. This is where our 960 width is coming in at. Our footer is at 100%. Well, our picture. All right, our nav is also at a fixed width. That's pretty obvious. Our header is at 100%. So initially, because we're at 960. Once we go past 960, we're going to get this horizontal scroll bar. That is, I don't want to see a horizontal scroll bar. All right, so as we approach 960, the minute we drop down to 979, we're going to get that horizontal scroll bar. So at this point, we want to make anything that has a 960 width, we're going to change it to 100%. Another thing I want to emphasize, what you're doing is you're overriding existing properties. You are not adding new properties. Not to say that you can't add new properties. Everything is inherited. So adding a new property is not going to cancel out the existing property. When there has to be a significant change, you override the property in the media query. All right, so right now everything looks okay, but as we get smaller, at some point we need to stack these up. So we need to get rid of our floats. So there's three things that you're primarily doing. Initially, we're working with the outer 960 containers. There are two elements. Our navigation is at 960, and our ID equals content down here is at 960. We need to change that to 100%. Also, we're going to get rid of this image. One approach to a mobile layout, because we have limited amount of space. Get rid of whatever you don't need. That image looks pretty, we don't need it. So that will also disappear. When we go smaller, what we're going to do is we're going to get rid of this background image, and we're going to get rid of our floats. It's very simple. These are floating. All you have to do is get rid of the floats, and they will automatically stack on top of each other. And that's all that you have to do. You don't have to do a whole lot. It may look a little daunting, but I'm trying to show you that media queries can be more simple than you think. And here again, when you're developing a layout from the ground up, you'll start thinking ahead of time, and you'll start using different values for your percentages that scale a little bit nicer. All right, so as always, the first thing you want to do is take a look at your HTML code. All right, let's scroll down into the HTML. All right, there's the body, there's our header. Now remember, the header by default is at 100%. There's our navigation, and this is at 960. All right, here's our image. Our image is inside this aside. So in order to make this, you want to get rid of the whole container. Not just the image, get rid of the whole container. So how do we do that? We set the display property to none. That's how you get rid of content on the page. It is the CSS display property being set to none. Now here's our content. And this is what I did. I just added this inline. And the reason I use outline rather than border is because border will put width into the overall layout. Outline does not. So sometimes I'll do that. I'll go in and I'll put outlines around things so that I can see where they are. All right. Now within our ID equals content, here is our 3 columns. Notice they all share the same class. How simple. All right, now we do have a class clear fix up here, so it is up to you to go into the CSS and determine the appropriate selector. You want to see where the float is set, and you want to change that float. The CSS syntax is float : none. All right, as we go down into our footer, here again we have a div container. Inside that div container we have 2 sections, a section here and a section here. Here again we have a float. Both of these sections have IDs. All right, so let's go up and take a look. Now, because I'm in a browser, my virtual viewport and my layout viewport are one and the same. However, the first thing you always do when you're working with a media query is to code in your meta viewport tag. That's what that's called. They refer to it as a meta viewport. All right. Meta name equals viewport, content equals width equals device width. Because as I have pointed out in my video tutorials, by default, our mobile devices have a very high internal resolution, such as 980. And that is done so that it will fit large amounts of content into it. However, it's not usable. So what we're doing is we're saying that the internal layout viewport is going to equal to the width, whatever that width is. And initial scale has to do with scale. All right, let's take a look at our CSS. Where is the, oh, this is the CSS. All right, here's the, excuse me, there's my style. All right, here again, I just have some reset styles, something that you see done often. Global styles for my body that doesn't necessarily pertain to you. Here's my a couple classes. All right, there's my header. There's the navigation. All right, now here, there's nav. Okay, so, and here's the width. Width is 960. All right, so one of the first things we need to do is we need to get rid of that width. All right, and this is our selector right here. So what I'm going to do, and remember, all of these styles will be inherited by every device. You don't need to rewrite them. You don't need to copy them and put them inside a media query. They're already being inherited. What you need in your media query, so let's get the media query at the bottom here, and I'll have a nice little comment. Let me just copy this comment in here. Media queries. All right, so we're going to start with at media, screen, and we're scaling down, so we want max width. I don't know why my IntelliSense isn't coming in. And I'm going to go 959 pixel. So that's anything 959 and under. All right, so these are my media queries here. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to do nav, and I'm going to set another style with 100%. All right, let me save that. Let me reload. See what works. I'm going to start coming in. So it's hard to tell whether it works or not. All right, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to do a background color in here. There's background color. Because this is what I suggest you doing. Control S. Let me pull this off. And by the way, I like going out and then coming back in again. Let me reload this. And so let's see if we hit this breakpoint. There we go. There's our breakpoint. All right, so this is what I'm saying about testing. But please take it out before you send it to me. Comment it. I have just verified that I have hit that breakpoint. All right, we want to do the same for our outer container. Another thing that we want to do at this breakpoint, we're going to get rid of our image. And so let's take a look at our, that was the aside. So here we have aside, and we have display none. So if I go back up here and I go back in, open it up, there we are, I reload. There we go. All right. Now the next thing, now notice the syntax of the media queries. You have your outer curly braces, and then you also have regular CSS. So what this is saying, as I said before, all of these styles are inherited in here. It's just saying that anything 959 and under will now have these properties. And as I said, you can add something, but you're primarily concerned with looking at what is already set and essentially changing it, overriding it, because this will take precedence. All right, so we need another one. Let me just do this real fast, and I'm not going to give you the rest of the answers here. Say we want to make a change at 600. Say at 600 we want to do something else. All right, now you do not, here again, you do not have to repeat this. We already did the nav at 100%. All right, we already did, let me move this up. Here's my 600 pixel media query. Okay, we already did our aside. Please do not be repeating these. That is not necessarily, because this is going to be inherited down here also. Why? Because it scales down its max width. All right, it's saying at this maximum, inherit these colors. Well, those colors are going to be inherited at a 600 maximum also, because it's scaling down. So here is where you want to start overriding. And let's do color green. And you can do this with two media queries. Control S. I forget what I said in the assignment, but I think you can do it in two. Let me go up here and reload. All right, reload here. And as I get narrower, there's my green. All right. Okay, so this is an overview of what you will be doing in this week's assignment. And here again, because everything is inherited, you want your media queries at the bottom of the page here. And please take a look at the existing styles and the requirements, and let me know if you have any questions.